Hello, everyone. Welcome to CXO Spice Talk. Today's topic is creativity and zero trust. We have a very special guest today. So let's welcome Space Rogue, X-Force Global Lead of Strategy and Special Initiatives at IBM. Hello, Chris. Welcome to Spice Talk.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
So, Chris, before we dive into our discussion today, tell us a little more about the story of Space Rogue and your experience by testifying in front of a Congress back in May 1998, at the time when internet was exploding in popularity. So also, how did you end up joining IBM?
Yeah, it's a long story. I'll try to give you the short version. I was involved with a bunch of friends of mine who basically we were all hackers at the time, and we were doing good security research. Granted, back in the mid-90s, we didn't really call it security research then. And we started to get some notice with our stuff that we were posting, and we were invited to testify in front of John Glenn and Senator Thompson and at the Government Affairs Committee, and talk to them about weak computer security and its role in government. And it made a big splash. We got a little bit of funding after that, started a company. Of course, after the dot-com boom in 2000, that the company didn't do so well, but most of us stayed in security. I worked at a bunch of different companies, including Tenable and TrustWave. And eventually one of my old bosses found their way to IBM, and they called me up and said, hey, you should come work here at IBM with me. And I was like, hey, that sounds like a great idea. And X-Force then was just starting out. It was almost 5 years ago, where we just started X-Force with Charles Henderson and Steve Osipek. And it's been a crazy ride ever since then. We've been growing crazy, a lot of excitement, a lot of new stuff. It's been fun.
Well, fascinating, Chris. I think we can have another chat just on that topic, right? IBM is really lucky to have you on the X-Force. You know, speaking of the evolution, I noticed that IBM has really embraced the creative life, right? We are seeing the company literally redefine how the world sees the role of creators. How do you see creativity in our lives and why it is important?
Yeah, I think creativity has really expanded its definition recently, especially with IBM's involvement. When you think about it, everybody's creative all the time. Mm-hmm. I put my son's food together in the evening, and if I don't put the vegetables in a certain, in different patterns every night, he gets upset and won't eat them. So, I'm being creative, putting the vegetables on his plate, but also when I'm writing an email to a coworker or drafting a report and typing out long amounts of words and information, that's all being creative as well. That's all creative stuff. Solving problems every day is part of being creative. So I think with IBM's involvement, we're trying to look at how this creativity works in the workplace and how it empowers people to go on and do a better job. And so we're trying to help people with that.
That's you're right on. Everybody is creating something in different ways every day, right? It's interesting. According to the report from LinkedIn, creativity is the most in-demand soft skill and is second overall to cloud computing, which is a hard skill. So that actually, the data really was shocking to me. But as we create more, we will need a greater confidence our world changing ideas are protected. So what is IBM doing to solve this problem?
So right, with all this creativity, it's generating an immense amount of data, right? And all that data is being stored somewhere. And we need to protect that data. So, we're looking at different technologies and leveraging some of the expertise that we have here at IBM to try to make sure that the things that people create, whether it's an email or a book or a YouTube video or what have you, is protected and safe so that it can be consumed by other folks. And it's important because there are a lot of attackers who are trying to get at that information, either for monetary gain or other reasons. And so it's important to protect that data and realize that although it may be small, it's still very important to make sure that it's secure.
That's great to hear. Knowing that we have X-Force there from IBM, we can be more protected, right? Let's take a look at cybercrime from a 50,000 foot view. The global cybercrime cost now tops almost $600 billion, according to McAfee. And will this number continue to rise or decline, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a big number, right? $600 billion is a huge number. And I've been in this industry a long time, and I've seen similar reports like that. And yeah, the number keeps going up. And I'll tell you one reason why is because the information, the creativity, the value of that data is also increasing. Mm-hmm. So while the attackers are going after the data, they may or may not be getting more or less data, but the value of the data that they are getting is much more valuable. And so that number that we're seeing being reported is also increasing. But at the same time, security folks like myself and X-Force we like to think that we're doing a really good job of protecting people's data and preventing the attackers from getting in and getting that information out and then trying to change it, convert it into monetary funds.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're right. Data becomes a new currency in today's environment. As we see the rise of AI and edge computing, what is the new definition of security?
Yeah, security's changed and it hasn't changed, right? I mean, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time, and we have some new technologies now like AI and machine learning that we can use to leverage in the fight against attackers. But the basic components of security are very, very similar to what they have been in the past. We have to know what it is we're securing, where the information is, what its value is to the organization, what's most important. We have to make sure that we apply patches and secure critical infrastructure and make sure everything's up to date and has the latest security fixtures. We have to configure our networks properly and make sure that we have firewalls in place and permissions are set properly and that the right things can talk to the other right things. We have to look at our users and make sure that they only have access to stuff that they are supposed to have access to. And then we can go around and look for attackers and see if somebody's trying to get into our network or not. Mm-hmm. And this is the basics of security that we've been dealing with for the last 20, 30 years or so. But now we have new technologies and new tools that we can apply to this to try to make it even more secure.
Yeah, speaking of firewall, I believe the Zero Trust is the new firewall these days. So what does Zero Trust really mean to you, right? People understand creativity, but when it comes to Zero Trust, what does it really mean? Why is it important?
Yeah, Zero Trust, it seems to be getting a lot of attention right now, but it's not a new idea. It's actually something that came up in the mid-90s. At that time, and even now, actually, a lot of companies, a lot of organizations had pretty much what we call a castle and a moat topology or network infrastructure, right? We have all the juicy good stuff in the middle, and then we have an edge or perimeter around that network to keep the attackers out, right? And the attackers knew this. They knew that as soon as they breach the outside wall, once they get inside, everything is open and they can get to whatever they want. So Zero Trust changes that model. And it changes that model to basically verify every transaction, every login, every device, every connection on the network to make sure, are you supposed to be here? Do you have the right permissions to be here? Is there anything weird about your connection? And so that's what Zero Trust is it looks at those connections, looks at those users and makes sure that the user has access to certain permissions or an application has access to certain things and doesn't just have wide open access to everything inside the perimeter. And this is important because now we're dealing with a very remote workforce. We're dealing with a hybrid workforce where some are inside the network and some are outside the network. We have hybrid cloud. We have information or data that is stored on site and on the perimeter inside the organization. And we have data and information that is stored on a third party. And so the castle and moat methodology no longer works. And if you're an organization that still has that type of setup, you're probably not being very secure about it. So a lot of companies, a lot of organizations looking at this Zero Trust model to give them an extra layer of security in a distributed environment to help protect their information and data.
Yeah, that's so important. According to the IBM Cybersecurity Index report, right, 90% of cybersecurity incident caused by human error. So how can we prepare for the evolving future of cybersecurity, and what are some of the specific steps you would recommend?
Well, you're right. The weakest link is the human error, right? The humans are the ones that click on the links that open up the bad, open up the network and allow the attackers to get in. So we have to look at the user as, of course, as the weakest link, and we can do that. A lot of people look at education. Okay, let's teach the user not to click on stuff, and that helps, and that's great. But it's never going to be 100% because people make mistakes, right? We're all human. Eventually, sometime we're going to click on something we weren't supposed to, and we're going to open up our organization to an attack. So we have to look beyond education and teaching people what to do or not to do. And so we have to look at technology that can examine network traffic, examine user actions, examine what's going on between applications, and look for anomalies and things that don't look correct, so that they can then flag them and send them to someone and say, hey, you need to look at this, or they can stop it right there and say, oh, this is not good. We're not going to let you do that. So we need to leverage technology, leverage AI, leverage machine learning as we go forward to augment the education part, so that we can everything can sort of work together and prevent the outside attacker from getting in.
Yeah, that's a great point. I also realized that many companies may not be aware of how many endpoints they have within an organization. I actually worked with one company, did the audit with them. They thought they had 300 endpoints. Turns out to be 3,000 endpoints.
We see that all the time. One of the first things that you have to do when you're starting a security program is an inventory. And people think, oh, well, I'm just going to count up all my machines and my inventory is done. It has to go beyond that, right? You not only have to know what endpoints you have, and people, I have 15 desktops and 13 laptops. Okay, well, how many phones do you have that are connecting to your network? How many wireless access points? How many printers, right? These are all access points into your network. But beyond that, what applications are you using? Which ones are you hosting? Which ones are hosted somewhere else that have access inside? All these things. It's
third-party contractors, right?
Third-party contractors, right, which also have access. So, we say inventory and we think, oh, we're just going to count up things, but it's much more involved than that. You really have to look at your critical assets and know where your information is. So it's also an information inventory, right? Because it's all kinds of different types of information. Some of it's more important than others. So by identifying the crown jewels of your company and your organization, you know that you can then apply resources and more security around that information, where maybe you don't put so much around some of the other stuff that isn't as important.
Absolutely. So where are you seeing the progress in cybersecurity? Are you optimistic about the future of cybersecurity?
Yeah, I'm always optimistic. I know it's easy to get worn down. I've been in this industry a long time, and burnout's really a big thing. And it's hard to realize. You see the headlines every day, and another company got breached, and they got gigabytes of data, and there's ransomware and cyber attacks, and other countries are getting involved and launching attacks these days. So it's easy to get very morose, if you will, and say, oh, what I'm doing it doesn't matter. But it's important to realize that the technology is advancing, and we're able to leverage that technology to protect users and prevent attackers from getting in and getting that information. And I think part of the advantage that I have here at X-Force is that I get to see that almost on a daily basis, where our testers are going out and they're testing networks and they're giving the results to the companies, and they're saying, hey, we found all these problems. Now, these are things that you should fix. And then they'll call us back in 6 months or a year, and we'll test again. And we're like, oh, you fixed all these old problems. That's great. Of course, there's always some new ones that we find, but there's that progress that's being made, that there's additional security steps that are being taken, and more protection is in place for our clients and therefore their users, and the world is a better place.
Well, at minimum, right, everybody really knows the importance of cybersecurity. We know everyone needs to do cybersecurity. But we all have limited resources. How do we really absorb and mitigate the cost?
I think we're also seeing a change here in the boardroom with regards to cybersecurity, right? I think in the past, it was always considered a cost center and maybe something that wasn't important and wasn't given the important level that it should have. We're starting to witness a change that it's a slow change. and depends on the organization. But we're starting now. We have CSOs, right? 15 years ago, that wasn't a position that really existed at most companies. So now we have somebody in charge of security in the organization. That gives you an idea of how important security is, right? Now, how do we prioritize our limited resources? Because nobody has unlimited funds, nobody has unlimited people. So you have to figure out where you're going to put that money and those people to have the most impact. And you do that by prioritization, right? Looking at, again, where your crown jewels are, what your information is, and comparing that to what the vulnerabilities are. What's the likelihood this is going to get attacked? What's the likelihood that this particular vulnerability is going to be exploited on this particular machine to get this specific data, right? If that likelihood is low, well then, move your people and resources and money to something that the likelihood is high. So by prioritizing and ranking your attack surface, if you will, you can then move your limited resources around to apply them to the places that they're going to do the most good.
Mm-hmm. Is there any customer success story you can share with the audience?
Well, I mean, we have success stories all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Like I said, we do repeat testing for a lot of customers, and whether that's a network test or a wireless test or a hardware test or open source intelligence or any one of the myriad of things that we do, a lot of times we go back and retest, right? Because that way the company can realize or look at the things that they fixed and see if our attackers are hackers, if they can still get in, right? The folks that work for X-Force. And then they can say, oh, we filled all these holes and we've patched all these things. And so they can then look at what happened at what we found the first time and compare it to what we found the second time. A lot of our companies, a lot of our clients don't really want to have their names attached to things, but I see these things all the time. This is a constant thing for us, where a company will bring us in, or sometimes it's after the fact where we do an incident response. X-Force also does IR stuff. And so they've already been breached. Somebody's already gotten into their things. They'll give us a call. We'll come in. We'll say, yep, here's how they got in. Here's the information they accessed. Patch this, reformat these machines, do this, do that. And then, then we'll start a testing program where we test their networks or their wireless or what have you for them. And then we'll come back and test again. And so, I see, this is why I'm always so positive about the future of cybersecurity, the question you asked me before, because I see it in action every day. And so while the headlines are scary and frightening, I know there's progress being made.
That's so encouraging to hear. So how would people get hold of X-Force if they're interested in working with you? IBM.com. We have a webpage up there. Google also works well. You can also contact me directly if you want. I'm on Twitter or email spacerogue@ibm.com. Okay, wonderful. So Chris, here comes to my last question. Right, I can talk to you for days, but I mean, we have to, out of respect for your time, right? And here's the last question. What do you like to create, right? Since we talk about creativity today as well. So what is one thing you created that nobody knows about it yet? Nobody knows about? Wow. Most of the stuff I create for consumption, I release, right? So I've done numerous websites. I've done video shows like yours before. I've done blogs. I've done podcasts. What do I mean, and of course I create stuff internally for IBM all the time, presentations, reports, emails. What have I created that nobody knows about? I mean, I have some stuff I'm working on. I'm not sure I'm ready to share it yet. But yeah, what are things, something you created you're most proud of? Right? What am I proud of? Yeah. Well, I mean, I used to do a show called the Hacker News Network, which was a weekly web show, like basically before YouTube. So it didn't take off very well because the consumption of video is difficult. I did the Cyber Squirrel 1 website, which was well received first time. I did the Whack Mac Archives website, which was hacking tools for early Macintosh stuff. There's a lot of stuff I've created. So most of it I probably don't even remember now, but look for stuff from me in the future. I'm always making stuff and creating stuff and working on new things. And I'm sure I'll put something else out there soon. fascinating. I'll keep my eyes out for your creation, right? So thank you so much, Chris, for sharing your wisdom with us today. As you said, as a matter of fact, every individual is creative in different ways, right? On the surface, we talk about writers or filmmakers, and we all call them creatives. But, however, a person who solves a critical problem, makes a life goal happen, or starts a business, or even just bakes a beautiful cake is creative, right? And really the premise of zero trust security is assuming your operation has been breached. So I really like how IBM describes zero trust. IBM talks about security wrapped around every user, every device, every connection, every time. So this really simple yet profound view mimics the creative process we all love to have, right? So thank you everyone for joining us today. Stay hungry, stay creative, and stay grateful.